Swami to tell him. I, I felt that I had to talk to the Swami to tell him my story, and I actually found him interested to listen. It was very intimate, sitting with him in his apartment, and he was actually wanting to hear about me. While we were talking, he looked up past me, high up on the wall behind me, and he was talking about Lord Chaitanya. The way he looked up, he was obviously looking at some picture or something, but with an expression of deep love in his eyes. I turned around to see what made him look like that. Then I saw the picture in the brown frame, Lord Chaitanya dancing in Kirtanam. Inevitably, meeting with Prabupada meant a philosophical discussion. Chuck, I asked him, can you teach me Raj Yoga? Oh, he said, here is Bhagavad Gita. He handed me a copy of the Gita, turned to the last verse of the sixth chapter, he said, and read. I read the translation out loud. And of all yogis, he who is worshipping me with faith and devotion, I consider to be the best. I could not comprehend what faith and devotion meant, so I said, sometimes I'm getting some light in my forehead. That is hallucination, he said. So abruptly said it, although he did not strain his person. The words came at me so intensely that it completely shocked me. Raja means king, king yoga, he said, but this is emperor yoga. I knew that he had attained such a high state not by using chemicals from a laboratory or by any Western speculative process, and this was certainly what I wanted. Are you giving classes? I asked. He said, yes. If you come at 6 in the morning, I'm giving classes in the Gita and bring some flower or fruit for the deity. I looked into the adjoining room, which was bare with a wooden parquet floor, bare walls, and a tiny table. And on the table was a picture of 5 human-like figures with their arms raised above their heads. Somehow their arms and faces were not like any mortal that I had ever seen. I knew that pictures was looking at me. When I came out on the street in front of the storefront, there were a few people standing around, and I said, I don't think I'm going to take LSD anymore. I said it out loud to myself, but some other people heard me. Steve, I wanted to show my appreciation for spiritual India. So I presented to Swamiji that I had read the autobiography of Gandhi. It was glorious, I said. What is glorious about it? Swamiji challenged. When he asked this, there were others present in the room. Although I was a guest, he had no qualms about challenging me for having said something foolish. I searched through my remembrances of Gandhi's autobiography to answer his challenging question. What is glorious? I began to relate that one time Gandhi, as a child, although raised as a vegetarian, was induced by some of his friends to eat meat. At that night, he felt that a lamb was howling in his belly. Swamiji dismissed this at once, saying, most of India is vegetarian. That is not glorious. I couldn't think of anything else glorious to say. And Swamiji said, his autobiography is called Experiments with Truth, but that is not the nature of truth. It is not to be found by someone's experimenting. Truth is always truth. Although it was a blow to my ego, being exposed and defeated by Swamiji seemed to be a gain for me. I wanted to bring before him many different things for his judgment, just to see what he had to say about them. I showed him the paperback edition of the Bhagavad Gita that I was reading and carrying in my back pocket. He pursued the back cover. There was a reference, the eternal faith of the Hindus, and Swamiji began to take the phrase apart. He explained how the word Hindu was a misnomer and does not occur anywhere in the Sanskrit literature itself. He also explained that Hinduism and Hindu beliefs were not eternal. Bruce, after I talked about my desire for religious life, I began telling him about a conflict I had with one of my professors in English literature. He was a Freudian, so he would explain the characters in all the novels, and so on in a Freudian context and with Freudian terminology. Everything was sexual, the mother for the son, this one for that one, and so on. But I would always see it in terms of a religious essence. I would see it in terms of a religious impulse or some desire to understand God. I would write my papers in that contest, and he would always say the religious can also be interpreted as Freudian. So I didn't do very well in the course. I was mentioning this to the Swami, and he said, "Your professor is correct." I was surprised. I'm going to an Indian Swami, and he is saying that the professor was correct, that everything is based on sex and not religion. This kind of this kind of pulled the rug out from under me when he said that. Then he qualified what he had said. He explained that in the material world, everyone is operating on the basis of sex. Everything that everyone is doing is being driven by the sex impulses. So he said, Freud is correct. Everything is on the basis of sex. Then he clarified what material life is and what spiritual life is. In spiritual life, there is complete absence of sex desire. So this had a profound effect on me. He wasn't confirming my old sentimental ideas, but he was giving me new ideas. He was giving me his instructions and had to accept them. Talking to Swami was very nice. I found him completely natural and I found him to be very artistic. The way he held his head, the way he enunciated his words, very dignified, very gentlemanly. The boys found Swamiji not only philosophical but personal also. Steve, a few nights later, I want to see the Swami and told him I was reading his book. One thing that had especially caught my attention was a section where the author, Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasdeva, was admitting that he was feeling despondent. Then his spiritual master Narada explained that his despondency had come because although he had written so many books, he had neglected to write in such a way as to fully glorify Krishna. After hearing this, Vasudeva compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam. When I read this, I identified with the fact that Vyasdeva was a writer because I considered myself a writer also and I knew that I was also despondent. This was very interesting about the author Vyasdeva. I said he wrote so many books, but still he was not satisfied because he had not directly praised Krishna. Although I had very little understanding of Krishna consciousness, Swamiji opened his eyes very wide, surprised that I was speaking on such an elevated subject from the Srimad Bhagavatam. He seemed pleased. Chuck, I had come by in the afternoon, and Swamiji had given me a plate of prasadam. So I was eating, and a chili burned my mouth. Swamiji said, "Is it too hot?" Yes, I said. So he brought me a tiny teacup with some milk, and then he took some rice off my plate and took a piece of banana and crushed it all up together with his fingers and said, "Here, eat this. It will kill the action of the chilies." Bruce, there wasn't anything superficial about him, nor was he ever contrived, trying to make some impression. He was just completely himself. In the Swami's room, there was no furniture, so we sat on the floor, and I found this to be very attractive and simple. Everything was so authentic about him. Uptown to uptown at another Swami's place, we had sat on big stuffed living room chairs, and the place had been lavishly furnished. But here was a downtown Swami, wearing simple clothes, robes. He had no business suit. He wasn't covering up a business suit with those saffron robes, and he wasn't affected as the other Swami was. So I found myself asking him if I could be his student, and he said yes. I was very happy because he was so different from the other Swami. With Uptown Swami, I was wanting to become his student, but because I wanted to get something from him. I wanted to get knowledge. It was selfishly motivated, but here I was actually emotionally involved. I was feeling that I wanted to become the Swami student. I actually wanted to give myself because I thought he was great and what he was giving was pure and pristine and wonderful. It was a soothing balm for the horrible city of life. Uptown, I had felt like a stranger. Hare Krishna. Here, We can see that more and more people are joining Prabhupada's storefront temple and listening to Prabhupada's class and started their interest in reading Bhagavad Gita. The early followers of Srila Prabhupada were deeply attracted by his unique combination of uncompromising philosophy and personal warmth. We can see that people like Chuck had stopped using LSD after being around with Prabhupada and start reading Bhagavad Gita. That is the power of association with a great personality like Prabhupada. Whether he was shattering their egos by disagreeing the ideas about truth and yoga, or surprising them by validating Freudian theories within a material context, they felt that this authority was something different. The Swamiji is like not like the others Swamijis or spiritualists they had encountered in the past. Prabhupada lived in a small place with no furniture, wear saffron clothes, and led a very simple life. He is like a fatherly figure for them. When one person burned the tongue with chili, Prabhupada crushed banana into rice and milk and gave to them to soothe the burnt tongue, like a father would do for their children. He's so compassionate and patient with them. Ultimately, this fatherly care that transformed many lives, leading them to abandon drugs and worldly ambitions to become his devoted students.